What is going on, you guys? I have another quick episode for you today. This one is from a guy named Paul Elam, and the video title is 7 Deal Breakers with Women. Should be an interesting one, so let's hop into it.
Paul Elam with an ear for men. Today my talk is about 7 opportunities for screening out women whom you might otherwise allow to enter your life, romantically speaking. If you're the average man, that might seem like a strange concept. It is not something that most parents teach. In fact, most parents, if they teach their sons anything at all about sexual survival, just tell them what they must do to attract women and to take care of them, not how to cull out undesirables or how to take care of themselves once they are involved. PUAs and sexual gamers put you almost exclusively on the same path as your parents. And for those who are insecure enough to have blind gynocentrism and life on your knees shape the core of their identity, PUAs and gamers may actually have some good advice. With that, let's take the road less traveled for just a few minutes and talk about deal breakers with the duds out there. There are plenty of them. We will start with things women communicate to you early on, right after meeting you. If any of the following comes out of her mouth at the earliest stages of getting to know each other, she is telling you that if you stay around, you're an idiot. This is where you get to pay heed to something you've been badgered with all your life.
It's funny because I don't think he's used the word yet, but red flags. Deal breakers, red flags, non-negotiables, like things that you should just walk away from or find a way out if you hear one of these things.
Is listen to the woman. And buddy, listen closely. She's telling you something every time she talks. She says nothing meaningless and never will. The only question is whether you will be smart enough to actually listen. Okay, let's do this thing. Here are 7 early deal breakers for someone you think you might want to be with. 1, she asks you what kind of car you drive. Guys, she doesn't know jack shit about cars. She's just sizing you up financially. Ditch the bitch. And look, I get it. All women size up men financially. It's part of the human condition. But a more sensible woman will get to know you and will want to get to know you before being concerned about what you drive. She will be patient, knowing that she will figure out along the way whether you're provider material. That's a problem too, but it doesn't have to be a deal breaker this early on. However, if she's brazen enough to be that transparent, then do a U-turn and put her in the rear view. Pat yourself on the back as she fades out of sight. 2, she asks you how...
I think a couple of these are going to be around that, but like them sizing you up, like how much you're worth basically in terms of your finances. So obviously like a big one to be careful of, because you don't want to deal with a woman who is with you because of that reason, right? Like, where do you live? What kind of car do you have? He's about to ask this next one. So, I mean, another sign of that same thing.
How much money you make. You should respond to this question with, I don't know, how much do you cost? Seriously, guys, only a money-grubbing skank asks you how much money you make before she knows your middle name. Besides, smarter women will just ask you what you do for a living. It's the same question, but at least it shows some intelligence and tact. Perhaps she's smart enough that she can be trained or educated out of her hypergamy. Anything is possible. Now, down the road, if you're serious about each other and are discussing the possibility of sharing life as a team, then both of you having your financial cards on the table may be a good idea. But early on, this question only means one thing. What can I get out of you?
By the way, if you don't know what hypergamy is, it's super simple. I mean, both sides do it. I think women do it more than men, because men were a little bit more simple when it comes to like attraction. But this is the importance of this video, right? Is being one of the guys who is not naive and actually has more qualification. Like he's like a better interviewer when it comes to candidates for the women that he's dating, especially considering long term. But hypergamy basically means going for your best option, right? So like what he's talking about basically is like woman sees she has an option or a few options. This one's here, this one's down here, this one seems like a better option. So she's going to do everything she can to go to this one, right? So just like something worth considering, especially if you're in the early stages of the dating process. I mean, like especially if you're not together now, there's definitely horror stories of guys like where they're together already, like they're in a relationship, engaged, married, etc., where the woman still acted on the hypergamy, right? So still went for the better option, even though she was in a committed relationship with kids, whatever, right? it's just worth you knowing some of this stuff, being aware of it. It's not to make you like super cynical or like because finding the right woman in an amazing relationship is awesome, and also two things can be true at the same time. That finding a fulfilling, supportive relationship, being able to actually filter to find that best fit, and then you also knowing some of these things about female nature so you can know what to look out for. Like you have a pair of glasses for it, basically.
Her to the curb and call next. 3, she asks if you want to have children. Not with her, you don't. Besides being a big giveaway for her being a woman who is already calculating child support, it is also the first hint that she lives on Cluster B Street near the corner of Borderline Avenue. No one, and I repeat, no one in their right mind starts talking reproduction in the first conversation. Some women, particularly older ones who feel their use-by date slipping into history, will be more prone to this. Don't excuse them. It is not your fault that they ran off all the potentially decent fathers while they were sexually viable. Don't let them trick you into the quick knock-up and court-ordered child support. They have been single all these years for a reason. You don't need to spend time figuring out what it is to know that your attention is better placed more on women who are interested in you instead of your sperm. 4.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, because at a certain point, it makes sense if the conversation comes up, but that should be after a while, right? Like after you've been dating them for a while. Now, what he's saying is if that comes up like on your first date or your first few conversations, right? Like it doesn't even make sense, right? And so you have to be careful. Like all those points he was making was really valid. Like you need to look out for yourself in this situation and don't be pressed or pressured because of her timeline. Like don't let her place that on you because it's not your responsibility, right? I mean, like you're simply making sure that they're a good fit for you long term. And if they're trying to speed things up because of that, it's just realistically, it's not a good sign.
She asks what you want in a woman. Yeah, right. Besides this being nauseatingly cliche, let's go ahead and translate this turd of a question into what it really means. Tell me how I have to act to make you fall for me, even if it looks nothing like I will actually be in a relationship with you. The best suggestion I can make is that when a woman asks you what you want in a woman, tell her your penis. If she tries to take you up on it, run like hell. Or, if you're feeling really adventurous, tell her you want a woman who gives good head, doesn't talk too much, and turns into a pizza and a six-pack at midnight. She probably won't be insulted, and if she is, she won't act like it because she's already established that she's a shapeshifter that is just looking for a clue as to what shape to take in order to sink a hook in you. Number 5, she spends the...
I mean, that's obviously he's very like blunt and crude with some of the stuff that he says, but I mean, they're fair points, right? Realistically, I mean, that is a very interesting question that you might not have thought of as being a potential negative, right? Like, oh, that's a good question. Well, like, because a lot of guys are really naive, right? Realistically. So, funny enough, what he's saying there, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's like they're wanting to know how to act, even if they're not that person. Especially, like, you'll find out that they're not that person later down the line, but they're trying to figure out how to act to get commitment out of you, or get kids, or whatever out of you, marriage, right? Anything. Like who to be rather than themselves. You see what I'm saying?
better part of a first date telling you what assholes her exes were. Well, this is like asking you what kind of car you drive, how much money you make, if you want children, and what you want in a woman in one breath. And you should get it in your head right away. If you start seeing this one regularly, she will annoy you by playing chronic victim so much that she brings out the worst in you. Then she will use that to tell some other schmuck a year from now on her first date with him what an asshole you were to her. This is not a probability. It is not even a likelihood. It is so certain that Michio Kaku could express it on a chalkboard with deadly accuracy. Do yourself a favor. Push the jettison button on this one with extreme prejudice. Tell her you'd like to see her more, but the demands of making snuff movies keep you busy. Ask her how much money she makes, what kind of car she drives, and by the way, can she pick up the check for dinner? Pick your nose and study the results at the end of your finger over your plate of risotto. Just do what it takes to make her lose interest. Hell, tell her you're an MRA if you have to. 6.
Let's go back to that one. just for a second because I want to.
Or if you're feeling really adventurous, tell her you want a woman who gives good head, car you drive, how much money you make. If you want, and if she is, she won't act like it because she's already established that she's a shapeshifter that is just looking for a clue as to what shape to take in order to sink a hook in you. Number 5, she spends the better part of...
Okay, she spends the better part of your first date telling you what assholes her exes were. Okay, well, that makes sense. It wasn't really a question. Like, the other ones were, like, her asking you a question. But that's a good point, too. I mean, this actually goes for guys, too. I mean, like, it just shows a lack of accountability on both sides. Right? Like, oh, all my exes, all my friends, my family, they all leave me. You know, they're all toxic. They're all narcissists. Like all of a sudden, everybody's like a professional psychologist and, you know, professional therapist these days. Like, the amount of times when I went through something like a breakup, right? And I found myself, it was before I deleted TikTok, right? I found myself on like Instagram and TikTok, and I was getting all these videos where random people were saying like, oh, they're toxic, they're narcissists. It's like, if that's something you actually went through, right? Like, you actually dealt with a narcissist, then I'm sorry, right? Because that is brutal. And a lot of people, the thing is that's like disrespectful to throw that term around so often, because most often that's not the case. So if you went through it, I'm sorry. And most often, so many people use that term so loosely that it's really like kind of losing its meaning, right? Like people are using it too much, and it's really just to not look inward to figure out what they could do better, right? It's like it's everybody else's fault but mine why my relationships aren't working out, and there's a common denominator there. So that's basically what he's saying, right? Is if you or somebody else keeps saying this thing, right? Like all my exes were toxic, assholes, narcissists, blah blah blah. It's a really bad sign, basically. So let's get back to...
Or you'd like to see her more, but...
Number 6 here.
The demands of making snuff movies keep you busy. Ask her how much money she makes, what kind of car she drives, and by the way, can she pick up the check for dinner? Pick your nose and study the results at the end of your finger over your plate of risotto. Just do what it takes to make her lose interest. Hell, tell her you're an MRA if you have to. 6. At any time during her first 100 hours of talking, she says the words, "I don't need a man." The hell she doesn't. In fact, she needs men much more than the women who are secure enough to not need a man and secure enough that they don't have to blurt it out like a butt-hurt welfare tramp trying to make herself look less of a leech. Women who brag about not needing men are the neediest women on the planet. They need men for money, for enabling delusions, for the repair of anything that has moving parts, for someone to blame when they don't want to own their shit, which is pretty much any time they are conscious. They need men for all the wrong reasons and none of the right ones, like a partnership, love, and a sense of belonging. Like I said, listen to the woman. If she doesn't need a man, and she feels a need to remind you of that before she knows anything about you, listen to her. Then check your junk. Then take the appropriate action and 86 the bitch like she could transmit an STD with her breath. 7.
That is a good one, for sure. For sure. I mean, because if you think about it, it's like anybody saying, it's like them being like a little kid, right? Like they're being a little kid about it, right? Like, I don't need that. I don't need a man. Right? It's just this level of insecurity coming up, and it's really based on their past, like what they've gone through so far. So, you know, of course, they might have gone through some unfortunate things, right? Now, it's still their job to become the best version of themselves possible, to not act like that, right? To realize that, you know, they want a man, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, I would say that, you know, a lot of brainwashing has been happening where it's like, no, you want to be a boss babe, you want to be a CEO, you want to climb the corporate ladder, blah, blah, blah. And it's been done out of necessity, right? Like women not having someone around that they love that can support them, right? So, you know, and maybe they've gone through a slew, like several, like, you know, crap relationships, right? Whether it was with ex-partners or their father, right? So they have some resentment towards men, which all loops back into that, which is like, no, I have my own money. Like, I don't need a man, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can see the little kid or the resentment coming out in that. So again, he's making a good point. Like, just something to steer clear of for sure.
She tells you she's a feminist. If I have to explain this, forget everything I've said in this video so far and rub your scrotum with meat tenderizer so the blade won't have to work so hard. I can't stand the thought of that, so let's just leave that one right there. Guys, at least some of these 7 points were intended to be humorous, even if there was some very real truth in all of them. The point here, though, is to let men know that approaching women with the idea that you will take whoever will take you is for PUAs, gamers, and other losers. An attitude of scarcity and insecurity leads to really shitty relationships with really shitty women. Treat yourself better than that. Explore what she has to offer aside from her looks and her needs. If your investigation into that puts her off, then make that number 8 on your list and call it a day. As an activist, I get emails all the time from men in trouble. All of it. Seriously, I mean all of it. Going back to women they chose to invest in. I'll wager that none of them ever considered early on that they had to hold those women to any standards. Like most men, they were just happy that someone they were attracted to wanted to be with them. Now look at them. Don't be that guy. Well, that's it for this talk. I hope you've enjoyed. If you like the videos from this channel, please subscribe. And if you're inclined to help keep the lights on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, all those were great points. And, some of them are brutal realities. Right? I mean, you might have gone through them, or you might not have gone through them yet. So good for you to have seen this video now, right, to save you a little bit of trouble, because the reality is what he's saying, right? Like, there's a lot of guys, and I've said this a few times before too, there's a lot of guys are too naive when it comes to dating. Like, they're still in like the Disney fairy tale mindset, and they lack a pair of glasses, like, like x-ray glasses, to basically interview properly, to screen out people who are the wrong fit for them and people who are the right fit for them, right? So they end up in these essentially like garbage dumpster fire situations like you talked about, right? Like, a guy didn't screen properly, and then he gets himself either into an emotional mess or something more, right? Like emotional mess plus marriage, child support, the kids, the divorce, like stuff like that. So just obviously the point of this video is to teach you exactly what to watch out for and some big ones that pop up pretty often. So I hope that this video was helpful for you and you're able to take something valuable from it. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. You got this, bro.